So welcome back guys to my 10-minute Tuesdays, and in this one I'm going to be doing a little urban sketch. Now these 10-minute Tuesdays are all about sketching, drawing, watercolour, having fun, a bit of an antidote to perfectionism in the sense of they are just play. This is a complicated one, mind. I quite like taking on quite a challenging scene and distilling it down into really elemental parts, if you know what I mean. So yes, let's bring it up here on the screen, and you can see now there is a lot of perspective in this, and as you can see here I'm going to overlay the lines. It's 2-point perspective, so really the lines are all going on one street, all going to go to a vanishing point on the far right hand side, and then closer to me over here there's going to be one for the other street. And now I'm not something I'm going to draft. I could draft it. And what I mean by draft, I'm going to construct it with pencil lines and put in some guides so that when I sketch it, it's reasonably accurate. But I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have it in my head. And I'm going to have in my head vaguely where the vanishing points are. So let's get cracking. Just finished my pint of tea. Very good. Okay, in the interests of transparency, and I think this is quite funny, I did it. I drew it in 10 minutes. Really liked it actually, but I didn't record it. So if it's not recorded, it's not real. We know this from modern life, is if somebody's not taking a film of it while it's happening, it's not happened. So we're going to do it again and go for it. Right, so I've already figured out roughly my horizon line. I know that I want that to be there, and then this comes down and around the corner there, and then this is going to go down to there. One of the things I did last time, which annoyed me a little bit, is I put lampposts in, and it doesn't need lampposts. It's silly putting lampposts in this. There's really no need. Okay, so let's start with that shop front. There's a little bit of perspective, and that goes down to, where was it? It's quite far down, isn't it? It's about there. Now I'm going to lose a bit of time here, but I'm going to check that's recording, because I don't want it to happen again. Right, and that's going to go to there. So one of the things that there is in this is an awful lot of like kind of parallel lines. This is classic neoclassical architecture with colonnades. That line shouldn't be there, or maybe it should be there. See, now I've got confused. There's another, is there another tier on there? Yeah, because that's the halfway. Oh God, I'm getting confused now. Right, yeah, because we're going to go up there, and then this is round the corner. So this picture is Saltaire, which is a sort of, I think it's about 1850 model village that was designed around a mill. And the mill was, I think, a cotton mill, and basically it was, the village was designed for the people who worked in the mill, which at the time it would have been, you know, quite radical really, this idea of like the people who own the mill, and this guy is the guy, it's called Saltaire, and the guy that owned it was called Titus Salt, and he was one of these Quaker dudes, very much into like not boozing, healthy living activities. So he built like libraries and schools. I mean, it's fascinating really. And it's one of the things that I always think is interesting about that era of the Industrial Revolution is, of course, everyone thought stuff was going to last forever. But, you know, in 20 or 30 years time, it was cheaper to make cotton in other countries, and actually that kind of boom wasn't that long in Britain. We tend to think of it as a kind of quite a glorified few hundred years, but it really wasn't very long at all. Right, so what's going on down here? There's some stuff, but needless to say, I mean, I think Saltaire is a bit of a survivor in the sense that it remained pretty much untouched in a way. I think partly maybe there was land in trust, or it was part of an estate or something. You know, I think legally these little funny things often protect these areas. And putting these marks, I quite like that heavy jointed masonry. But I went to Saltaire to meet some friends for a sketch, and we had a really lovely day talking about art and going for coffees, chatting about all businesses. And we went to see the David Hockney exhibition. I surprised everyone by explaining that I'm not that enthusiastic about David Hockney and his work. It's a funny thing, it's very personal, but I think particularly his more recent stuff that he's done on the iPads and things, it leaves me a little bit cold, to be completely honest. And I often think with very well established artists, what I tend to do is I tend to ask myself the question, if I didn't know it was a Hockney, you know, would I like it? And it was interesting because one of the other guys who I was with described some of his art as like A-level art, which I thought was quite funny. I mean, he's a teacher who teaches A-levels. But anyway, interesting. So at this point, I've got 4 minutes left, and this is when the fear kicks in. I obviously not counting windows here. I just went making my way down with a bit of perspective. Really, really fudging it. Here we go. And we've got some shop fronts here. I'm not quite sure how they delineate, but I'm going to delineate them somehow. Just put in some little features. I'm kind of making a lot of this up, actually. There is a door there. I like these Quaker Spot fountain pens. They always give a really good flow of ink, and it's one of the nice things about using conventional fountain pens rather than anything fancy like a flex nib pen or, you know, food pens or Fude, is they just work. I must admit, the fountain pen like flex nib pens are wonderful. I really enjoy sketching them, but I've had so much bother with them just not working, irregular ink flow. And actually, I've lost my temper with a couple of them, and just like, you just get so annoyed with them when you're like, why aren't you working? And I think the flex nib is just not quite as a reliable kind of point of contact almost than a normal nib, because obviously when they flex, they lose contact with the you know, with the feed, and you can get all sorts of problems with dried ink going into the feed and stuff like that. Right, so we've got this little curb here. Let's make a bit more of a feature of that. There we go. 2 minutes left. And we're going to have some paving stones. Using the other side of the pen now. I often think these types of lines are really good at sort of describing perspective. You can cheat a little bit and kind of exaggerate them. Maybe didn't need those chunky bits there, but never mind. Okay, so let's just put in a couple of really thick lines here, and they're just to sort of add a little bit of style, bit of va-va-voom to the picture. And there's a bit of a tree happening there, and also some landscape shiz. Some shapes there. This is the sort of focal point really here, this shop, I think. I like it. Draw the eye into there. They've got some vague window things. Maybe some bits about there. And there we go. So let's have a look at both of them. It's quite interesting, this. So let's have a look at those. So we've got that one, and that one. That one, that one. That's rougher. And that one's neater. It's really interesting, isn't it? Rougher, neater. Yeah, there's a bit more textures, a few more horizontal lines in that area, which kind of looks a bit more like the reference drawing. So we're just going to hair dry that, and then 10 minutes of painting. Okay, so let's put some water on these paints. It's good to spritz them, just to activate them. They do take a little bit of time just to get going sometimes, which is no bad thing really. And we've got some clean water here. I'm going to try and basically mix a lot of this on the paper and try and keep out the palette as much as possible, which is easier than it sounds actually. Obviously all window frames aren't white. This is kind of almost like a style thing really, as much as anything. It's just to try and break up some of the lines, create a bit of chaos. Now obviously that's white, I've not got any on, so maybe that would be a fun last thing to do. There we go. Okay, so there we are, all done in the end. Let's bring that up a little bit closer to the camera and we can have a look at that. So what do you think then, guys? I think it's quite successful. I think some of the verticals have gone a bit way over that way. That one's like that, and then that one's like that, and then that one's like that. But it looks good. It's nice. It's got looseness to it. It's got energy. I think there's a real sense of the perspective, and that sky, like I said when I was doing it, it's a bit on the nose really. You know, it's kind of maybe a bit over the top, but I like it. And at the end of the day, this picture, believe it or not, is not worth £1 million. The person who's going to see it is me, maybe my kids. I might sell it for a few bucks. So should we sign it in a suitably random way? Done. So I hope you enjoyed that. We'll leave it there.